I just always saw the world in a skewed way. I saw the world comedically since I was a young boy. My parents made the best mistake ever as parents, which was I had a regular bedtime like any young boy of like 8 o'clock. But I had a TV in my room and they never made me turn the TV off.
Wow.
So I've been a night owl since I was 7 years old. Been watching Saturday Night Live reruns and SCTV and Kids in the Hall and David Letterman, and it shaped my brain. And I always looked at the world satirically, and I love comedy because you see through
The bullshit.
the bullshit.
Yeah.
You see truth through comedy. That's what I love so much about it.
Are you allowed to curse if you're running for president?
Typically no, but now, fuck yes you are.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think. Can you imagine if that crossed the line for somebody now? That would be hypocrisy that I would not be surprised by.
I actually have a theory that the reason why Trump repeats himself over and over is because he would normally curse in the second place, but he knows he can't curse now because he's the president of the United States. So he actually just repeats his last sentence instead of going, "Can you fucking believe this?"
That is very possible.
Right?
That is very possible. Also, he repeats himself, I believe, because he literally is trying to hypnotise people when he speaks.
And maybe himself, trying to
Maybe
convince himself.
of his own bullshit?
Yeah.
He literally always is like, wah, wah, wah. You're getting very sleepy, want to wall, look at the tiny spinning hand. And you leave that speech and you're like, I don't know what he talked about. I think we need a wall.
I think we need a
I
wall.
feel like I've slept for an hour.
Do you think that his supporters are totally hypnotized?
I do. I think that they are one of 3 things. One of 4 things. I think they are either hypnotized, some are just embarrassed and afraid to admit the mistakes. It's a big problem. I think most people have.
That's ego.
Ego. And it's such a mistaken view of ego too, because people think that a strong ego is one that can't admit a mistake.
That digs their heels in.
Right, but it's so clearly the opposite. If your ego is so fragile, if you can't admit a mistake that it would crush your whole sense of yourself,
Right.
that's a very non-agile
Yeah.
ego. In fact, one that can admit a mistake and learn and grow and change is one that is strong.
Yeah.
So it's either that, or it's people that are so desperate for change and so desperate for a better lot in life for themselves and their families financially that they just have to. They see themselves as having to put up with a lot of Trump's garbage. They agree he's a bad person, and they think, I have to deal with it because he's promising me things that other politicians never have. And that's an audience that I can talk to. And then, lastly, it's a lot of racists and negative influences in our society that
A lot of racists, or do you think it's just a handful of racists that yell the loudest?
I mean, it's hard to know, because noise
That's what
is
I'm hoping
noise.
for.
I hope you're right on that. A lot doesn't mean millions, but I think there's a good amount. I think that there's a lot of people, unfortunately, I don't think it's a tiny amount. I don't think it's a handful, because just from my experience as a comedian traveling the country, unfortunately, a lot of places in the South usually is where I find it. While there's tons of amazing people, there's also lots of people that drop the N-word at the drop of a hat.
Did you see when Jon Stewart confronted the judicial, was it the committee last week? I don't know if it was
Yeah.
judicial.
The Congressional Committee about the 9/11 Victims Fund.
Exactly.
I did. It was
I
amazing.
thought that was an amazing piece of oration.
It was beautiful because it was just so heartfelt and real
Heartfelt,
and off the cuff.
off the cuff, but real specific, very pointed. And I miss seeing people speak like that, because I think right now we have, this guy in office that can't put a sentence together. And
He puts many together at once.
yes, from different
It just flies
thoughts.
around. I'm the best. Another thing. A lot of people are saying this is another great thing, and people are saying I'm the best. People are telling me that we're gonna do this. Don't like brown people. It's like it's just a lot of stuff coming at you. It's like, did you just throw in I don't like brown people in there? That was random. And then someone speaks from the heart and emotionally, and it's so different.
And eloquently.
So beautifully. And that also was an example, because the biggest hurdle I've been facing in my campaign for president so far is people always saying, is this a joke? Are you serious? It must be a joke.
Right.
Because I'm a comedian. Well, look what Jon Stewart just did. Look at the people that are instantly verified and legitimized as serious candidates for president. It's just all 23 people who are already in government
Right.
or multi-millionaires. And they're instantly, any congressperson, two-term congressperson announces, they're covered in every news station.
Yeah.
But why? We all know that Congress is ineffective and doesn't.
There's no surprises. We know exactly where they stand.
And they all stand for almost the same thing.
Right.
And they're arguing on tiny margins of these issues. And I keep watching every night, Judy Woodruff on PBS NewsHour has another candidate on. And she asked them, rightly so, the first question, why do we need your voice in there? We've got 23 others like you. And they struggle to answer that in any interesting way. Yet there's no question why you would need my voice in there. I have a very different voice in this race. And take the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund for an example. I've not been able to extend it for the life of these heroes' lives for all of these years, 19 years since 9/11, 18 years. And those are the people that we take seriously, that have not, even the quote-unquote good guys, even the guys on the Democratic side that are fighting for these victims and fighting against Republican obstructionism, even on our heroes' lives, have been unable to convince even that. And Jon Stewart, a comedian, goes in for one day, for one speech for 10 minutes, and speaks from the heart, and they vote unanimously the next day to approve that fund through the House, through the panel, at least for now. And you doubt whether I am a serious candidate?
Exactly.
Ask that to all of the other candidates who are maybe running for self-aggrandizing reasons when there's already 22 of your cohorts in there. So why we need my voice is, I think, for two major reasons. Is one, we need to take our democracy back. And you're not going to do that by trying the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
We've been electing over and over again the same cautious, self-interested career politicians and ultra-wealthy elite, and expecting different results. Well, that's the definition of insanity, right?
Right.
Literally trying the same thing over and over again. And it's not that some of these people aren't well-intentioned. I like a lot the personalities and what seems like the character of a lot of Democrats running for the nomination. But they've been empowered and have been ineffective at creating systemic change or creating big change. And I think to a large degree it's because when you're in power for a long time, you just lose the common touch. You lose the urgency of now, the urgency of how important these problems are in people's lives. And there's nobody other than somebody who literally is, and I wish there were more people like that running, but there are so many financial barriers, who are actually the workers around the country that aren't entrenched, powerful people. But the closest to that is a road-traveling stand-up comedian.
Right.
I've chosen to spend my life for the last 2 decades traveling to towns constantly, big and small, Republican and Democrat, making 300 or 30 people laugh. Sadly, often 30, because my ticket sales are not always what I want them to be. And shaking everyone's hands after the show, hanging out with them, having a beer with them, not just when running for office, but for the life I chose. That's who you want representing you, because also, sadly, comedy clubs and strip malls, as I say, and cable TV shows don't pay as well as people think.
Right.
People think you're on TV and you're instantly rich. I've been on TV for many, many years now, and I recently had to struggle to pay my bills. When my TV show went away, it didn't even pay that much to begin with, and when it did, your money goes away and you have to figure out how to pay your bills in a city with a very high cost of living. And so I think somebody who knows real struggles is so important to have advocating on your behalf. And so democracy's been taken away from us in every way where only the rich and powerful have a voice. So somebody who truly understands how we have to get the money out of politics, how we have to stop partisan gerrymandering to carve districts around black people in America, in modern day.
2019.
It's the most insane miscarriage of democracy that it's allowed. And politicians on both sides just allow it to be the reality.
Right.
And so many other things.
And I think you're right. It's because it's not huge for them. It's not huge for their life.
Yeah.
It's this idea of service that I think they forget about.
Mm-hmm.
That they take this job in office to be of service to people. And it feels as though they're okay with the incremental wins,
right,
because it keeps their job afloat.
Right.
I want to go to that moment of, I'm going to run for president.
Yes.
Tell me about that moment in your mind. Was it something you were thinking about? Was it something Trump did that created a switch for you, that the light bulb went on?
It was everything that Trump did that hit a bunch of switches for me, that turned on so many lights I couldn't sleep. In the back of my mind, like I said, since I was a kid, had the thought maybe it'd be cool to one day go into politics. Didn't think I'd run for president, never. And I put that thought out of my head and definitively decided I would never do that, because it started, that thought was restrictive for being a free comedian, even starting out in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. You think that, and you're not free to speak on stage and say things you want to say and be a true artist. And so I had to close that door and just let myself be free and say crazy things and express every crazy thought. And Donald Trump I became, along that path, very, very engaged in politics. And when George W. Bush won the first time, I became focused. When he won the second time, I became passionate and an activist and an outspoken comedian in a way that I never had been. And started a podcast called Last Week on Earth, where I cover the news and politics every week in a way that makes it accessible to people, in a way that makes people who never cared about politics care about it. Because I think that's so important. There's so many millions of people that are just completely overlooked by our messaging and our news media.
Yeah, and how it relates to their daily lives.
Yeah,
that's what people care about.
Right, because nobody links it. Nobody links it. Nobody says a global gag rule or a gag rule on abortion funding and even referring to abortion services. They say here gag rule. They don't know gag rule means you have to shut the hell up. Right. And you can't tell your patients the truth. No one connects the human pieces. And so I started doing that. And I became a guest correspondent on places like CNN and ABC News and NPR for years on a show where comedically I would try to help explain the things that were going on politically. And then Trump gets elected. And I became so fearful for our democracy and for the future of our country. And I just kept having this thought hit me late at night watching the news. I might have to throw my hat in the ring, because I do not know if these other politicians can beat him. When we saw Hillary lose to him, a very talented politician, I think, in most ways, an amazing resume. You can't ask for a better resume. Incredibly qualified. Some say the most qualified candidate ever. And loses to him by an electoral landslide, pretty much. And I started thinking, what if it happens again? And America, as we know it, is gone, and I'll live the rest of my life just wondering, what if I threw my hat in the ring and maybe it helped? Maybe we do need a comedian at this moment. And I just couldn't avoid that call anymore, and I had to try. Waking up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, God! And it was so scary. It's why I jumped in so late. I kept saying no. I kept thinking of other ways. I for a while was exploring doing a comedic pilot about running, where satirically I was going to run and make fun of the process. I was actually shooting some of that and editing it, and it felt so empty. I'm at the edit bay making a very funny pilot that will never see the light of day, and I'm like, I can't release this because it's not what's needed now. Our country's in peril. And I kept rejecting that call until I couldn't anymore. And I just saw the people throwing their hat in the ring. It's the same politicians over and over again. I said, I just can't do it. And I had to put my life on pause and try the riskiest, scariest thing I've ever tried, to offer my voice in this race to run for president of the United States. And then I told my parents, whom I love and I'm so close with. And my parents at first didn't understand and said, are you nuts? You're not really qualified to be president. What public office have you held before? What business have you started or you've become some huge success in? And that gave me a week or two of pause, and I'm like, well, that's, I guess, a fair point. And then I realized in another aha moment, that's exactly why I should run.
Right.
Because we don't need always just people who are already in government, and we don't need to keep valuing just ultimate success in business. That's why our country keeps tilting towards business interests only, and towards corporate interests only, and away from the common person.
Because we value the wrong things in success.
100%. We've lost sight of what the American dream is supposed to be.
Which is what, in your eyes?
It is being able to achieve success in your field, job security, and financial security, most important than anything, so that you can have a safe, comfortable life and know that you can provide for your family healthcare and food and safety. That is the American dream, and being able to hopefully one day own a home so you have that piece of land in America.
And it shouldn't have to kill you to own that home.
It should not. You should have to work 3 or 4 jobs to own that home. And that's the American dream that I achieved. And I realized, shouldn't we have a president for once? And shouldn't we have a candidate in the race for once that just has aspired to that dream and achieved that dream, the accessible American dream, not the one that has been sold to us as a lie through people like Donald Trump and even other billionaires in the race, that I'm going to become a billionaire or a Kardashian. No, you're not. You're not going to. There's some 0.00001% chance you will, but if everybody aspires to that 0.001% chance, everybody's going to end up disappointed, and you're going to keep electing people that are going to try to sell you that dream that is not accessible, and you're going to end your life being stuck where you are. We need somebody who actually knows that the real American dream is one that you can achieve, is one that if just a few things shift in the favor of low and middle income earners that make their lives a bit easier, that now those people can have the life they dreamt of in an accessible, real way. That's something that I could help shift our mindset towards. And I realized that was what I could help offer. And my parents realized that made sense too, and are now huge supporters of the campaign and recruiting their friends to donate and volunteer. And my girlfriend is working around the clock helping me on my campaign when she gets back from work.
So sweet and supportive. That's awesome.
Incredible. It's been the most touching thing I've ever experienced in my life, for sure.
Let's talk about immigration.
Yeah.
People say it's so complicated. I want to know what you would do to fix what's going on at the border right now.
What I would not do is put children in cages to begin with. You know, people love.
It's a good start.
It's a very good start, I think. People love eating cage-free eggs. Good for you. I try it as well. I think cage-free children is a higher priority.
Yes.
And so we need to bring humanity to our immigration policies because it's the very basis of what our country is. No liberals that I know are advocating for open borders like they attack us with. Nobody says just do not enforce our borders. We need strong borders.
Yeah.
And people on both sides have been in favor of border protections. I don't even think a wall is immoral. Both sides have been in favor of border protections. Hillary voted in the past for a border fence. I've joked to Mac that in some ways that's worse. You're actually telling people trying to cross the border, you can peek in at America with your hands on the fence. You can sit on the other side and say, no way, Jose, you can't come through. So we need to stop acting as though every idea brought up is so black and white. We need a combination of all of the best ways we can with technology and enforcement to protect our borders. We need to use technology, we need to use drone surveillance, we need to use stepped up numbers of people monitoring the borders, but what we need to do to fix the problem is realize it is a humanitarian crisis that is causing human beings to come here, and you must welcome them with humanity. We will still adjudicate each case individually, and we will still, by providing more judges to be able to get people through the backlog of cases much faster, we will.
For those that don't know, there are only 700 immigration judges to 750,000 cases right now.
Right.
So judges are definitely a big part of it. There's also some people advise that, feel free to take this, lifting the 10-year ban on people that are picked up and have illegal crossing on their record. There's a 10-year ban that they're not allowed back into the country. People think that that's why people come back over illegally, whereas if they would just lift that 10-year ban and allow them actual port of entry, that would help as well.
That's a perfect common sense example of something you can do. You just have to look at human psychology on most of these things and stop using humans as political pawns, and then policy comes a lot easier. And so yes, if you don't want people to come back illegally, tell them they're allowed to come back legally. That's just common. You can't argue the logic of that, of course. And you have to make our official ports of entry more accessible. But when people come here seeking asylum, seeking a better life with their family, you, of course, figure out the legitimacy of that claim, but you do it with humanity because America is based on immigration. We are all immigrants. And it says it on our Statue of Liberty, for crying out loud. Give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to be free. We are that beacon of hope for the world, and when we instead are racist and demonize the people coming here, we undermine the very essence of our country. So, no, I'm not advocating, nor is anyone, for open borders or weak borders. We should strengthen our borders. in a bipartisan fashion. But what we should never ever allow again is these people to be talked about as rapists and murderers and act as though gangs are pouring over the border. They are not. It is mostly families and people yearning for a better life and doing jobs that Americans don't do and being amazing members of society. And so we have to stop that demonization as the very core, and then we can have a conversation. But we can no longer allow demonization of human beings. It's just the core of what causes...
Politicizing
Yes,
human beings.
right.
Because anytime you politicize, you dehumanize.
100%. And that's why there's other common sense things you have to do that I don't know how anybody argues against. I just debated Tommy Lahren, and she agrees that children, even though she won't advocate for it loudly and publicly, she agrees when asked directly, you have to give dreamers citizenship because they're children that were brought here. When you're brought here as a child, you're basically brought here against your will. You're basically kidnapped by your family and brought here. Kids don't call the shots in their families.
Mm-hmm.
You're brought to a country when you're a child and you've been nothing but a productive member of society, you become a citizen, hands down. If you've been here for many, many years, as an adult even, and have been productive, you become a citizen. I always hate when people say, well, but it's unfair because they cut the line. People are waiting in line. I say the exact opposite to those people in line. It's great that you're waiting in line,
Right.
but if we so happen to have weakness at our border, that's our fault. We should fix that. But until we fix it, if you're so desperate for a better life, you are free to try to cut that line as well. Go to the Mexican border and try to come in if you're trying to save the life of your family. If you're trying to not be murdered by gangs in your home country, so it's not as urgent for you. It's not like we're saying those people must stay in line and only people from Guatemala can come in through the border. Anybody can try, and we're going to try to stop you at the border. So that's an invalid argument. So we just need to realize again that it's people coming through, and when you keep humanity first, you stop people, you adjudicate the cases, and you grant asylum when appropriate, and you send people back when appropriate, but you do so kindly because we are good people.
Everyone gets due process.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. It'd be
Remember when that was a thing?
No. Education. Where are you on education?
Not in favor of it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Next, I'm kidding. Education is so essential. It's the way that your nation grows. It's the way you incubate the future of your ability to compete in any way, to create the business leaders of the future and the citizens of the future and the civic leaders of the future. And so America should not have one of the lowest education success rates in the world.
And how do we level out the playing field of those in low-income communities versus higher-income communities?
Well, you need equity in education as well. You need to go case-by-case basis and give extra attention and funding and specific programs where needed. You need to also, I think, have some sort of national testing where there are, even through video, so you know it's the exact same, there's certain things that are being communicated well despite the quality of each individual school. You know that there's a certain amount of information getting to each student every year. You need to teach context in school, something that I wish I had when I was in school. Where's the point in having a discourse when you don't actually focus on facts? So I want everybody to know that I would never take away your guns or your right to have a gun. I believe in it and I'm getting one myself. Shooting guns is a part of America. It's a part that I like of America. But I do not like the fact that we have an insane amount of our own citizens being killed and mass shootings happening on the regular. That's ridiculous and we should stop that.
Or the fact that my 7-year-old and my 4-year-old have to do lockdown drills.
I can't imagine that.
It's really hard as a parent because not only does it invoke their own anxiety, but to know that that is the reality and that every day you're making that choice to live in this country where your child can go to a very, good school and still have to suffer through our issue on how we interpret the Constitution. It's such bullshit and it's so gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
Where are you on abortion?
I've never had one. And I don't plan to. I will never have an abortion.
No.
I'm firmly against it
Therefore.
for myself. And I'm firmly against it for all men. And I think that is the whole point. Because I cannot have one, and men cannot have one, we should not regulate women's ability to have one. We should not. I'm so sick of male legislators, male politicians deciding for women's bodies. It's so ridiculous and offensive because you're trying to tell a human being what life they have to have. You're trying to impose your morality and just control over women's bodies in such a disgusting way. So not only do I believe that we need to protect women's access to abortion and expand it, we need to reverse the Hyde Amendment so that federal funding can go to reasonable abortions, and I'm advocating in my campaign for a constitutional amendment to protect a woman's right to choose, because we should protect a woman's right to choose as strong as we protect our right to bear arms in our Constitution.
Funny you should mention that, because the Equal Rights Amendment, although people don't like to discuss this aspect of the Equal Rights Amendment because they fear that it will become far too partisan, but the Equal Rights Amendment, which just had its first hearing in 30-something years, 36 years, would actually help women to have the freedom of choice.
It would help, but just to my reading of it, it's a little vague, and it's a great broad protection, which is wonderful, but I want a specific amendment to protect a woman's right to do with her own body what she wants.
So much like they're doing in the States
yes,
right now.
Like a lot of these states are just passing another one yesterday. I'm not remembering right now which one.
It was Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yes, exactly, just yesterday. And there's now like 8 states that have, in the opposite of these horrible repressive laws, are enshrining a woman's right to choose in their state constitutions and in their state legislatures. We must protect it. And so we actually started a petition with my campaign. We have almost 5,000 signatures already of people fighting, arguing, and saying, please, let's get a constitutional amendment for a woman's right to choose, because we just must. And the argument that it's a human life, with all respect, you can have whatever religious view you want, of course. Nobody will ever tell you that your religious view is wrong. And if your religion believes that an abortion is not appropriate, then by all means encourage your congregation and others of your faith to not have abortions. It's a free country and you should do that. But you should not, through the separation of church and state that is enshrined in what our country is, make your morality, your religious morality, imposed on the rest of us. And so we need to give women the right and the ability to do what they believe with their bodies. And I also don't think there's much of an argument, not to mention there are readings of the Bible where it seems not against abortion anyway. But I believe that something that is the size of a grain of sand, that does not yet have a brain, is not a human being. It's a grain of sand. Even weeks later, it is still the size of a grain over ice, still with no brain. If you don't have a brain, you don't have the ability to be self-aware. You're not a human being. You're the potential to be a human being. So is sperm. So is an egg. Every time someone masturbates, they're not committing genocide. I would never be able to sleep at night if I believed that to be true. I would be one of the worst in history. So it's very important that we try to stay focused on a common sense through line in our discourse. And I believe once a fetus is viable outside of the body, abortion should be completely outlawed, because that, at that point, in my opinion, is a human being.
Aren't you just so fucking sick of them using science as something that's irrelevant?
It's really odd. It's very, very odd. Even on the issue of climate change.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Climate change.
I just debated, like I said, Tommy Lahren, and I just released the video on my YouTube, on my podcast, and we're talking about this, and I go, the scientists of the world, 98% believe in. She literally goes, oh, scientists. And I said, why do you speak with disdain about science? That's the only
thing
grasp on reality we've got. What is it that you believe in? FoxNews.com? What source?
Did she have an answer for that?
I said, no, she just didn't. She changed topics. I said, what are you basing your belief that it's not 12 years we have to reverse course? Just something you're making up? And she goes, I just don't believe it's as urgent. And she goes, okay, so then I want to see you not driving a car anymore, Ben. Just deflects it to these other things. If we don't have science, I mean, come on. Jim Inhofe on the floor of Congress with a snowball saying there's snow still, so there's no global warming. It's extreme temperature swings and there's still going to be snow. There's going to be more snow sometimes. And why is my voice in such a high register right now? I don't know. Do you know?
Policy goes.
Sure. So.
Because I can tell you the issue that I think is most important right now.
Please.
I think income inequality is the biggest issue we are facing in our country right now.
Yeah.
And I don't see any hope that that is going to get better.
Yeah. So I think that it's 3 tiers. The first is not policy and the second 2 are. So I believe again, and I want to reemphasize it again because it's so important, beating Trump is the competitive advantage I think I bring to the race over the other candidates, because the last thing that my speech problem did for me is that when I would hit blocks in my speech, it would teach me to think of other ways to say things at a moment's notice, and my brain got fast. I think it opened neural connections, and it made me a really good improviser comedian. And we need that to take on the greatest heckler in American political history. And none of our other policy objectives will be possible. And the other 23 candidates can argue every issue at the margins and lose again. And then Trump is, with 4 more years, running roughshod with our democracy, and we don't have the country that we believe we always have had. So that has to be the number one. It needs to be a big factor in people's vote. Mayor Pete just said, I fear we're going to do the same thing and nominate a similar person again and lose again. He just said that the other day. Well, that's an argument for me, and I appreciate his endorsement. It's very nice of him to drop out and support the Gleib campaign. But once we achieve that, the other 2 most urgent, in my mind, are climate change and income inequality, like you said. And they are 2 existential problems. 1 existential for our planet, and 2 existential for the individual lives of people in this country. And so, once we stop Trump, we need to immediately take so seriously the urgent problem of our planet being in major peril. It's insane how the scientists of the world agree that if we don't reverse course, not slow down,
Right.
reverse course, within 12 years, our planet is past the point of no return, and we are not taking drastic action to move off of fossil fuels. Instead, we get out of the Paris Climate Agreement, when we need a stronger agreement and one that is more enforceable. We must get off of our use of plastics, reduce our meat consumption. We have to change the way we live. And we need somebody that can think out of the box and not in incremental ways to do that. We need somebody who says, we must come together and fight. And that's the other thing that I think on that issue is so important that Democrats so often do wrong, is because we believe we're fighting for the good side of history and for the human side of issues. We try to be good and human, and therefore too polite in the way we argue these issues. And the other side is bringing knives and guns, and we're bringing fruits to this fight. Right. We're bringing grapes to a gunfight. And you can't win that way. You end up with just squash grapes. And we need to fight harder. And so we have to frame things and phrase things in ways that are much more clever, like the Republicans have done so well under Frank Lunt's Words That Work, and the direction of using people's emotions. We have to do the same. Yeah. Climate change should not be able to be framed by the right as, oh, these soft, liberal hippies hugging trees. No, we should say to them, you're supposed to be tough, aren't you? Are you afraid of this fight? You chicken? Why don't you step up for the fight of our lives? You love action movies and you love Armageddon. This is Armageddon.
It's like dealing with my 7-year-old.
Exactly.
It's like,
you have to use psychological approaches.
You don't care about the environment.
Yeah, challenge them.
Yeah.
100%.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah, how do you get your kid to eat what doesn't want to eat?
Yeah.
You have to...
You can't eat those peas.
You probably can't even eat them.
You can't eat those peas. That's what I say to my son. You're going to eat all those peas? I don't believe you can do it.
Yeah, it would be impressive if you did, but I don't think you have the skills. And I think that's what we have to do. And so there's that. And then with income inequality in this country and an ever-growing wage gap and income and wealth gap, we have to reprioritize the way that we function, the way that we distribute the successes in this country. And it's not a redistribution of wealth in some scary socialist way. It's just kindness and shifting ourselves off of a focus on greed. No one is saying, and we have to again focus on messaging, when people on Fox News say, they just want to take all your money away. They don't want CEOs to make money. They don't want companies to make money. They want regulations up the ass and you're not going to be able to ever succeed. No one ever said that. No one ever said we don't want pharmaceutical companies to make money. I want them to make still billions of dollars. Just not $35 billion a year when you're charging for an HIV prevention drug thousands and thousands of dollars when in other countries it costs $60 for
Or insulin.
Or insulin. Or hepatitis C vaccine that you can't get unless you're very sick because it's so expensive that we have to ration it to those who are super ill instead of helping stop the spread of these diseases.
So heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. And so you have to just play on people's humanity and speak to their humanity and say, we want you, and make it very clear that we want you to be profitable. We want you to succeed in huge ways, but just with one simple tiny little asterisk on it, not at the expense of other human beings. That's all we ask. That's the only thing we ask. Once you're cool to your fellow humans, then make billions. Call me crazy on that. I think kids are cooler than guns.
So you don't believe in caging kids.
Not believe in caging them.
And you believe that their lives are more important than guns.
Yeah, slightly more important.
You're crazy.
I know, I've got revolutionary ideas.
Revolutionary.
I don't know if the country's ready for them. But I'm
Apparently not.
Yeah, apparently not.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to present them anyway. So I think our students and our children should not be fearing being shot at school. And it's a real problem. Parents at town halls I've held are telling me they literally are just afraid to send their kid to school or to religious school on Sunday for fear of being shot up. And so we need again to use common sense and to kick every politician out of office who is beholden to the NRA. Mm-hmm. It's insane that just a special interest group like that with millions and millions of dollars can buy votes. If you have an A rating from the NRA, you should be thrown out of Congress. And that should be a shame campaign on those people because you are risking the lives of our citizens and our children. So I believe in common sense gun reform that 95% of the country agrees on. Background checks, universal in every instance, with no gun show loophole, with no private sale loophole. You want to buy a gun, it'll be registered just like a car. It should not be easier to get a gun than a driver's license. You have to go through quite a process.
Do you think gun owners should be licensed?
I think absolutely you should be licensed and prove that you can operate that gun safely and responsibly. Mm-hmm. I think that we need background checks and waiting periods that are significant enough that you can thoroughly check for mental health problems and criminal backgrounds. Because another crazy idea, I don't think you should be able to get a gun faster than you can get toilet paper on Amazon Prime. That just seems like common sense. Mm-hmm. You can have the gun forever. Toilet paper you have to keep rebuying. So just be able to use common sense. Also, if you need a gun right now, probably a solid idea that you wait a few days.
Right.
Calm down. You'll get that gun in a few days. You'll be good with it. And so we also need to ban weapons of war from our streets. We do not need assault weapons in our streets or for hunting. You're a very shitty hunter.
If you need an AR-15.
If you need an AR-15.
You need another hobby.
To kill an innocent animal.
Yeah.
Either we
sneak up on.
By the way. Yeah, who you sneak up on.
You sneak
Don't
up.
even go heads up to them.
Doesn't even know you're there.
Yeah, exactly right. Either we arm the animals, which is an idea. I'm considering that as well. Yeah, give the animals guns. Or you don't have weapons of war for hunting. It's ridiculous. I spoke to an elk hunter once who talked about shooting them with a rifle from 100 yards away and trying to get as close as you can, 50 yards, 20 yards. And I said to him, do you ever go up and just punch the elk in the face? And he goes, well, I would never do that. I have respect for the animal. I'll give him a chance for a fair fight. That's the respect you have for the animal. But just killing him outright with no warning, that's what respect. I wonder how you treat your grandmother. My God.
They never see it coming.
Right. And we have to restrict high-capacity magazines.
Where are you?
But not taking anyone's guns, and that messaging there is so important too, because they've
allowed.
I
agree with you because we're actually a two-gun household, which people are stunned to find out because I'm a part of the GDP community, and I do believe that we do need stricter gun laws. So people are always stunned when I'm like, no, I don't want to take away your guns.
Right.
I just want to make it so that you're not with an AR-15, and that if you were to want to hurt somebody, that you don't have access to that gun.
Yes.
Like if you have a history of a violent past, or, I think these red flag laws are really important. I think a family member should be able to tell on you. Call the authority and say, you know what? My son is not himself lately, and he's got an arsenal of guns, and I think it would be appropriate if you went over and did a check.
I agree completely. You cannot be frivolous with the lives of our heroes, and we've done it so often in this country. I just got to visit with our troops in Camp Pendleton. They're just mostly young men and women that love this country, and sometimes are signing up because of that love, and sometimes because they need money.
Yeah.
They need direction or guidance. And the one thing we promise them is that we will take care of them when we'll protect them as best we can when they're serving. We will take care of them when they come home. And we're failing that in every way. It is so tragic. I would immediately shift funds from our military budget to fully fund the VA. It's insane that Obama didn't do that. It's insane that Trump claims he's so great on vets and doesn't do that. We need to fully fund the VA so that our heroes, if we can't provide good health care for our heroes who fight for us and risk their lives for us, what kind of nation are we? We are not upholding our values.
How about just childcare? There's a bill right now that passed out of the House called the Veterans Child Care Act, which basically says that we would offer child care to any veteran that is spending time in the VA for some sort of, whether it be drug addiction, something that we would offer. And McConnell will not put this fucking bill up for a vote. If we can't agree on how to protect and serve the people that serve this country better because of partisan politics, how do we fight for that? It's so disappointing to me. Veterans are a big issue for me.
Huge for me as well. Mitch McConnell, he's subhuman. I mean, man does not seem to have the emotions of a human being, and I think that's a pretty key quality for wanting to lead humans, is to be one of them.
At @spaced_1 has a good question.
Sounds like they're high.
Oh,
Space one.
funny you should say that. Legalizing cannabis federally. Do you support it?
I definitely support it. Yes, I would be a huge hypocrite if I didn't. And I've seen what it does for people in pain. I've seen what it does creatively for people's brains, and I've seen how it is
Anxiety disorder,
Yes.
which I have, and CBD has helped me so tremendously.
Yes, and we need to just stop. In general, in many ways, victimless crime should not be punished. And if you are doing something with the freedom you have in America, America is based on freedom, let's give ourselves some freedoms back. And it's clear in every way that marijuana is far less detrimental than alcohol. Alcohol is a destructive drug that I enjoy also sometimes, but there's just no common sense way to say that's legal and marijuana is not. Alcohol is not a drug you give people with cancer to help them. Marijuana is. So not that it's all about the drug aspect of the healing aspects of it, but if it can do that too,
Right.
that's a substance that I think should be given
it's the
access
healing
to people.
aspect of it that the pharmaceutical companies are so terrified of, though.
Of course. In San Diego,
And what did you study?
communication and theater minor.
Perfect.
Yes.
For everything that your life entails right now.
Indeed. So to answer your question from before about becoming a comedian, so I always saw the world comedically, and it just was the way that I identified. I loved, comedians just seemed to make the most real people. And it's also why I really believe comedians would make great politicians, because they're known for keeping it real and telling the truth, when politicians are known for the opposite.
Right.
They're known literally for lying and self-serving and not caring in reality about people. And so that's also what's so funny to me about people's skepticism about a comedian running. And I will say the side note, a comedian just won the presidency in the Ukraine. So please keep that in mind.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, by a landslide over the incumbent.
Oh, I didn't know that.
75% of the vote, Zelensky is the new president. He had zero political experience before. His only political experience ever was playing the president on a comedy show on TV.
Amazing.
So I have a lot more political experience than that. And then I always wanted to be a comedian and have that life, but I grew up with a severe speech problem. And I wasn't even able to talk much of my childhood.
How did that affect you?
In a lot of very interesting ways, because it was beyond a stutter. I had a stutter, but also a disfluency where I couldn't even make sounds come out of my vocal cords oftentimes. Couldn't say hi to a friend passing me in the hallway. Literally, they'd be approaching me and I'd be like, and I just couldn't. And so it affected me, one, in the way that I love to sing out loud, because I could always sing
Oh,
Singing
wow.
opens your vocal cords.
It didn't affect your singing, just
No.
your speaking, which is so
And it didn't help my singing voice either. I never got better. And, but what it also did was a few things. It forced me to stop talking and to listen and to be more aware of people's condition and the fact that they probably have things that they don't want to talk about, or the ailments that they're suffering through quietly. And it made me just observe people much more, because I was too talkative as a kid, I think, talking way too fast. And so it made me do that. It also taught me to overcome obstacles, and taught me that you can really overcome great odds. To get from a place where I couldn't say hi and have to tell a teacher, even in a discussion room of 15 students, even through college.
How did you overcome that fear?
Yeah, and it was fear. So
I'm sure.
I'd have to tell them, never call me, I can't speak. And I overcame it by a lot of realizations. I give a talk sometimes about conquering the fear and mastering public speaking. And it's people's greatest fear, right? Public speaking, so many people. I realized I was seeing it wrong. A lot of it is about ego, we already talked about. So people think when they're speaking, it's all eyes on them. And it's such an important moment. And they have this huge moment now that they have to present, and they think that they're about to be Martin Luther King Jr. up there. And the people expect some grand oratory. And the opposite is true. People have very low expectations, I realized, in general in life. They're not expecting some great speech. They're barely listening to you. They're probably on their phone. If they're listening at all, they're trying to get some negative information that might help them. They don't give a shit about how you talk. If your pauses are eloquent, if your vocal tonality is beautiful or not. So get over yourself. It was me. It was about, I was being too self-important. It's a problem you have just in our country too much, and in everybody's own ego. I realized speaking is a service job. Exactly like serving fries at McDonald's or being a stockbroker. You're providing a service for somebody. And it's no more important. You're just doing it on a 6-inch raised platform in front of a microphone.
I always put this pressure on myself to be inspiring when I speak publicly. And I think it actually hurts the connection, because so much of that is about connecting.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Just being able to have a connection with someone, I think, is inspiring, almost.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a key thing too, I learned not to speak in a way. Don't speak in a way that you think will be good. Just always speak from your heart, and always look at people in the crowd and connect. And that will adjust your speaking style in the most organic way. But half their time on the phone,
where they
and
should
fundraisers.
be in Congress, they should be in their districts, they should be learning about the, whatever they can help within their
Right.
district, and instead, they're in California trying to get money.
Ridiculous, and I'm trying not to do that. So, also for that reason, let's see. We are calling it the Democracy Challenge, because let's see if just small dollar donors can get somebody on the debate stage.
Did you know that once you're in Congress, you actually have to pay dues to get into any of these committees?
Is that right?
Yes. It is the craziest thing. So that's how you see a lot of these freshman class on these big time committees, because they actually have to pay to get into it. Which I was shocked I just found this out a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, when you have leftover money from campaigning, that's where it goes to get into committees.
I mean, in what way is money and influence not there? Because the other thing we just learned is that you can buy stories in all of these publications. You can buy, so we can't get the news to cover.
And they don't have to disclose that?
They don't have to disclose it, apparently. They're not putting an ad on top or sponsored on top. The fact that you can purchase your way into the New York Times or CNN is unconscionable to me. And on their end, as far as journalistic integrity, and we may have to buy one. We're considering it now, because we're being ruled out on our merits. And so we have to, to some degree, play their game. So I may buy one and then also expose it as I am right now. But that's insane. I'm doing both.
So you have this theory of, instead of going high when they go low, you believe that we should go straight out.
Yes, I think that as much as I love Michelle Obama and respect her so much, I worked with an organization, When We All Vote, on the Telethon for America, that I created back in November, but our goal was to help create historic voter turnout, and we did play some small part in creating that. We ended up having the next day in the midterms, best turnout since 1914, and record turnout ever among youth. And you were part of it, and thank you so much for...
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, for being part of the telethon. And, but I disagree with her on this one respect, is that, like I said, we need to bring the right weapons to the fights of our day, and we have to fight fire with fire to win. And so I think when they go low, it's a great chance to step on them, because they're down there already. And that's the way I phrase it. And not to anybody, you don't step on vulnerable people like the other side likes to do, but when people are trying to step on vulnerable people, you push them out of the way. It's not, we do not have time for being polite. Our country's being flushed down the toilet.
Right.
We don't have time to be, I also want to make sure I didn't get my suit dirty. My suit's dirty. 100% they are afraid to have a loose cannon, as they would term it, voice on there. I've messaged with news anchors who have said, I don't know, this is off brand for us, I'll talk to producers. The news should not have a brand.
Right.
You should report what happens. That's your job. And I've had even late night shows already say, comedy shows that should embrace a comedian as a possibility, as a voice in this, and they are not. Say, well, now that the first debate field is locked, we're just interested in having those candidates on. But these other voices weren't given a chance. My voice wasn't even given a chance yet on a mainstream way. And before even the first debate happened, still a year and a half before the election.
So what happens now? The debates happen. What happens with your campaign? You just keep plugging along?
Keep plugging along. We're trying to qualify for the second debate. And anybody listening, if you can go to gleib2020.com, if you believe in anything I've said, and believe in not endorsing me at this time, but just in an outside voice and in a comedian's voice to keep everybody honest, please go to gleib2020.com and donate whatever you can afford. Even $1 qualifies as a donation, but these things are very expensive, as you know. So if you can afford more, please donate more. And we're trying
and
to
also there are rules.
Right.
What is it, 150,000 unique donations to get into
Not
the
yet. That's for the
second
third
debate?
debate.
That's the third debate.
So the second debate, which we're trying to qualify for now for, is 70,000 unique donations, or 1% in the polls. And so we're trying to get the unique donations threshold, and we have a ways to go. We have thousands of donations. We have a long ways to go. We need some sort of viral moment of people saying this is a voice we need, so we can just have a counterpoint. And in case Ben is right and we need a comedian to stop Trump, or at least in the race for the next many months, to show the other candidates ways to poke holes at him and to weaken him and to kind of humiliate him and show them his weaknesses, then please help us get that viral moment and spread the word so that there can be not just the same voices over and over and over again. You're going to see on the debates very little difference in these people's policies for 2 nights back to back of 20 candidates. So we're trying to get there, but it's so much the news putting their foot on the scales, because also what looks like will be the case is not only do we need 70,000, we probably are also going to need 1% in the polls. Because what happened right before the first debate deadline was some real bullshit, Alyssa.
Tell me all about it.
Is we were going really hard towards that, and then with about 4 days to go, they came out saying basically you need both because enough candidates have qualified with just
Right.
the first threshold, and they give preference still to the polling, right? So even if you qualify with the donations, they give preference to polling, and enough are qualified with just the polling part. So the problem with that is they're only accepting polls where they list the names, not open-ended polls. That's how Governor Bullock was left out of the debate stage. And so I'm not on the polls. They're not mentioning my name. I believe I'm the only campaign that I know of, at least that we know of, that has thousands of donations and support in every state around the country that's not being listed in the polls. And so we have no possible chance. So we're starting a campaign now to write letters to the editor of the publications that are the qualifying polls,
Right.
saying just please list our name.
And who can afford it?
I'll eat a grape.
Yeah, please eat a grape. Let's take, do you want to take some questions?
I would love that.
So we did something new for this episode. We asked my Twitter followers if they had any questions for Ben. Will he make the ERA ratification his presidential first priority?
Interesting. We just talked about it, so...
This is from North Carolina ratifyera.org. So they have
They have an interest in this.
They have an interest in it.
No, I think ratifying the IRA is very important, but it's not my first priority because I think, like I said, the first priorities have to be addressing our climate issues as fast as we can and working to pass the cost of living tax refund. And then I want a constitutional amendment to enshrine a woman's right to choose. But definitely it's a priority of mine, as is equal pay. It's insane that that's not codified in our law already as well.
I think the thing that I noticed about your platform in talking with you is a lot of it is based on common sense.
I try.
Which I think is really important.
I
right
try.
now. It's so crazy that that's something that, you know, is unique, that your priorities and your platform would be based on something like common sense.
Isn't that weird? I know, I'm trying to do this crazy thing called ideas that people will understand and agree with.
You're right.
It's a new idea in politics.